Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 126. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and in the comment section, let me know, what are you more likely to watch this week? LIV Adelaide or the Zurich Classic? And I guess you can actually give your reasoning why, because some of you might be in a time zone where it's kind of hard to watch the LIV event, so I get it. I am actually one of those, basically doesn't come on until 10 o'clock at night, so going to try and watch as much as I can, but basically what we're going to do this week is dive into both events. Probably going to dive a little bit heavier into LIV Adelaide. To be honest, I am not a huge LIV golf fan, but I just think that there is a market there that might be untapped, and really, I mean, what we're seeing is just not a lot of popularity, not a lot of content. So there could possibly be an edge there. And then also it doesn't hurt that Scotty Scheffler isn't in these fields. So maybe we can actually hit some outright winners. That'd be cool. But along those lines, obviously last week we had the Heritage, ended on Monday, and Scotty did what Scotty does. Hurt that I had 3 of the top guys in the top 5 with Cantlay, Morikawa, and Thigala, but it is what it is. We still had a good week overall. Thomas stormed back to get the each way, had a bunch of tournament matchups and placings hit. So it was a good week overall. Had a pretty good DraftKings week. Sorry for not doing a show last week. Things got a little bit crazy. Just wasn't able to really record. So I do apologize, but we're back this week. And if you really hate LIV, I just ask you, just tune in, stick around for a little bit, because we live in this world where you either have to be on the far side of one or the other. And I'm sitting right in the middle. I mean, I really don't care heavily about LIV, but at the same time, I don't hate it. And if it's a new market that we can maybe make some money on or find some leans or find some edges, I'm going to dive in head first, and I'm willing to give it a chance. So this week, my primary focus is going to be LIV. I'm going to watch as much of it as I can. As I said, the time constraints are going to be a little bit difficult, but watch as much of it as I possibly can and just kind of dive in. I'd be lying if I said I watch all the time. I've watched several hours of LIV, which is probably more than a lot of people, but in the timestamps, you can check. If you don't care about LIV, I'll quickly break down the Zurich as well, but we're going to dive into it. It's LIV Adelaide this week, and this is, I guess, what you can say their signature event. At least last year, it seemed that way. It was very popular, went off, and was a pretty big success. Big crowds, basically similar to the Waste Management with the energy there in some aspects. So it's definitely interesting. Obviously, 3 rounds, 54 holes, no cut. The defending champ is Taylor Gooch. Now, he did shoot back-to-back rounds of 10 under 62 last year, so had an incredible start. Actually shot over par and still won by 3 strokes over Anirban Lahiri. Patrick Reed was tied for 3rd in 15 under. Cam Smith, 15 under. Tringale, 15 under. Pat Perez, 15 under. So those guys all tied for 3rd place. Obviously, they all played well. Spoiler alert, I have bet Cam Smith this week, so we'll get to why I like him in a couple minutes. But if we keep going through this top 10 here, some notable names. I mean, DJ was the biggest name there at 13 under. Right behind them outside of the top 10, we had Kokrak, Bubba Watson at 11, and then just some other notable names a little further down. We had Oosthuizen at -12, Koepka was -12, Answer -12, so they all finished T11. Koepka was meh, shooting 70, and then shot 76 in the final round, so he was 10 under. So, some of the big names didn't really show up last year, but partially that could be because this is a little bit of a shorter course, maybe a little bit more difficult in spots. It's played at the Grange Golf Club, which is in, obviously, Adelaide, Australia. The course is 6,946 yard, par 72. So obviously, from a yardage standpoint, from what we generally see on the PGA Tour, this is a short course, par 72. Now, the old 18-hole setup is a combination of the East and West courses at Grange Golf Club. The East course was redesigned by Greg Norman back in 2012. The 9th and 10th hole, and then 12 through 18 were taken from the East course to make up the front 9 of this tournament. And then the back 9 is holes 10 through 18 of the West course. So we got a little combination there of both of the courses. The 160-yard par 3 12th hole is nicknamed the watering hole, and it's LIV's attempt at basically the stadium atmosphere at 16 at TPC Scottsdale. And, we did see, guys basically, if they're making a hole-in-one, you're going to see beers flying. You're going to see a raucous attitude and atmosphere. So it's pretty cool, but kind of getting a little bit played out in golf. I think it's lost a little bit of his luster. Obviously, this last year, people got a little bit crazy at the waste management, but, we don't get to see a lot of golf in Australia. So it should be interesting. And obviously, they're going to be excited to have a golf tournament there. There are 10 par fours with an average of 408 yards. 3 of them are under 400 yards, ranging from 355 to 377 yards. 4 of them are 400 to 420 yards. And then we have 3 that are a little bit longer, over 420, longest being 454 yards. So really not incredibly long there with the par fours. There are 4 par threes that range from 136 yards to 243. Hole number 3 is the only one that's over 200 yards. That's that 243 yard. The other ones are 136, 155, 177, somewhere around there. So some pretty short par threes. The par fives are reachable in 2 by most. Longest is 560 yards, so really not too long there. Hole 7 is a really short one, only 514. And then, interestingly, we have back-to-back par fives on holes 9 and 10. So that's going to be kind of interesting. Now, the issue is with the shotgun start with LIV. Not everybody's going to experience it that way, but it is an interesting aspect. The greens themselves, honestly, LIV does not have a ton of information out there, so I don't even know what type of greens these are. Not that it overly is too important, but they are fast. Basically, we know that. So definitely want guys that are good putting on fast greens. And we have seen in the past that, sometimes faster greens can kind of equal the playing field with the putting, but I would expect, some birdies to be made here, especially for anybody looking to win this. Now, maybe not to the extent of 19 under like we saw last year with Gooch, but, we saw plenty of guys that were in that 15, minus 12 range. So I'd expect probably somewhere around there, winning score of minus 15, maybe minus 16. So you definitely want guys that can make birdies, but there is some trouble here. So probably looking at guys that can also avoid the bogeys. But if we dive into who I like, I said I like Cam Smith. So I made an outright on him. 12-1, I think, is a pretty good price for him in this field. Obviously from Australia, played well here last year. He's playing all right so far on LIV. 6th last time out at the Masters. So definitely like that. Obviously, that's a place where he generally plays well. He withdrew from Miami, but was 2nd in Hong Kong prior to that. So, last 2 times he's actually played golf, we have 2 top 10 finishes. So definitely like that. He came 3rd here last year. So I really like Cam Smith quite a bit at 12-1. Now, if we go to the top of the board here, the favorite is Rahm's 750, and then we have Bryson right behind him at plus 800. The length of this course, I think, doesn't really play too well to their strengths. I do think it suits Rahm a little bit more. So maybe if from a DraftKings standpoint, if you were looking to play these guys, I'd probably lean more towards Rahm. I did see that DraftKings has LIV Adelaide listed, but there's currently no tournaments there. So I don't know if that is strictly just a New York thing and I can't play LIV Golf on DraftKings in New York, or if they're going to be adding them later in the week. But if you can play DraftKings, I do think Rahm would be in play. I'd probably stay away from DeChambeau. Joaquin Niemann is next on the betting board at 9-1. And then Tyrrell Hatton at 11-1. I do think that if I didn't already have the wager on Cam Smith, Hatton would probably be the guy that I would go to. I do like where his game's at. Came 9th at the Masters, so played well there at a course where he generally doesn't play that well. 4th at Miami, 21st in Hong Kong, 15th in Jeddah, 12th in Vegas, and 8th in Mayakoba. So since going over earlier in the year to LIV, he's been playing well. Statistically, he's okay. 25th in greens and regulation percentage. He is 11th in birdies. And 8th in scrambling, 4th in putting average. So statistically rates out pretty well and has been playing well on LIV. So I think if you didn't want to go Cam Smith and you did want to attack the top of the board, that would probably be where I would go. And then next, I also placed a wager on Abraham Answer, 25-1. Now, there's a lot of guys in the odds before him, some good names here. One name that's really kind of surprising is Dean Burmeister, and he's only 16-1, but did play well here and has been playing well on LIV recently, just won. So I do think that that's a guy that could go overlooked from a DraftKings standpoint if you're looking at that. I don't know that I would want to make a wager on him. Louis Oosthuizen, 22-1. I think that's a pretty good number for him. DJ's at 22. Probably really not touching those guys. So I did like Answer quite a bit. And at 25-1, I think it's a good price. He's dropped to 22 on DraftKings and even 20 on some other sites, but he's first in fairways gained, 11th in greens and regulation percentage, 5th in birdies, 10th in putting. So love where he's at statistically. And, he's played well recently. He came 9th in Miami. He won in Hong Kong, defeating Cam Smith and Paul Casey in a playoff, 12th in Jeddah. So a good amount of good finishes for Answer. So I do like where he's at. I think his game could fit well here. And at 25-1, I think that's a great price. Next, we have another guy that played well last year here with Patrick Reed. I will definitely be placing wagers on him. I already have the outright. I think I'm going to bet a top 10 on him as well at 33-1. I think it's a good number for his outright. I've seen him as low as 25-1 in some spots. So definitely like Patrick Reed at 33. Statistically, nothing really jumps off the page at you. You wouldn't really expect it with him, but been playing pretty solid golf. 12th at the Masters where he tends to play well. 9th at Miami. He played an Asian Tour event prior to that, came 4th place. So pretty good. And then last year, third at Adelaide. So started off a little sketchy, 71. So not a great score, but then shot back-to-back 65s. So definitely like where he's at, like where his game's at. Think he's been playing consistently. So have the outright on him. Probably going to be placing the top 10 as well at plus 180. So I do like that. And then Paul Casey, I considered betting an outright on him. I do worry a little bit if this does kind of turn into a little bit of a birdie fest and we need a score of 19 under. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be the guy to get there, but I do think that he can definitely play well here. So I like the top 10 on him at plus 180. He's statistically rates out very well. 6th in fairways gain, 3rd in greens and regulation, 2nd in scrambling, 9th in birdies. So do like all that. Excuse me. And then he was 14th at Miami, the Singapore Classic. He came 6th, 2nd in Hong Kong, 5th in Vegas, 11th in Mayakoba. So a lot of good finishes for Casey. I do like that top 10 quite a bit. But that's really what I'm looking at there. Also made a tournament matchup, Neiman over Gooch at minus 120. I think a big part of that is just Gooch winning here last year. Excuse me, still dealing with this cold 2 weeks later, killing me. Got to take a sip of tea. It's ridiculous. Get sick for the Masters and still dealing with it. All right, but as I was saying, I do like Neiman over Gooch. I mean, minus 120 I think is a great price there. As I said, I think Gooch is being propped up a little bit because he won here last year. Now, granted, maybe it's a course that just suits him and he comes out and plays well again. But if you're going to give me Neiman the way he's been playing golf recently at only minus 120 over Taylor Gooch, I don't really care where they're playing. So I'm definitely going to take that one. But that's really all I'm looking at as far as LIV goes. As I said, from a DraftKings standpoint, if you are going to be playing, most people don't pay attention very much. So they're going to glob on to the bigger names here. But I do think that you can get away with, some Paul Casey. As I said, Burmeister probably will be a little bit overlooked. I would assume Kokrak played well here last year, so you could probably go there. Tringali, Harold Varner, I don't mind here. Sebastian Munoz. So just some names to keep in mind there from a DraftKings standpoint. As I said, I wish that I could see prices on them to really get a better idea, but just some thoughts there on LIV. But now we can quickly dive into the Zurich Classic. This one is, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of golf played on the PGA Tour, so I get switching it up. I really wish that they still had match play, but this is a nice little change of pace, and it's pretty cool. So basically, they're going to be playing best ball and alternate shot. We have teams of 2. There are 80 teams with a cut after 2 rounds down to 33 and ties. So there will be a cut. Basically, if you're playing DraftKings, all these guys are basically going to get the same amount of points that are on the same team. So you can't pick 2 guys that are on the same team. You can only pick one of them, and basically they're priced accordingly. So really, from a DraftKings standpoint, I am not going to play much. I'm not really crazy about this tournament. There is a lot of variance here. It's a Pete Dye designed TPC Louisiana, 7,425 yard, par 72, Bermuda greens. Pretty easy course, even when it was played just in regular stroke play. It was basically pretty easy. There's a lot of bunkers, a lot of really, really big bunkers. I think one of them is like 150 yards long. 8 holes with water. So there is some trouble around this place, but overall it plays pretty easy. As far as wagers go, I drug my feet a little bit too long. I wanted to bet Thigala and Zalatoris. They were at 12 to 1. Now they're all the way down to 8. So I don't think I can get there on them, but I did go Hadwin and Taylor, obviously a good pairing there at 30 to 1. So I do like them. I also bet Keith Mitchell and Joel Damon at 40 to 1 with 5 place each way. I think that they can pair well together, good ball strikers, pretty good with the long irons, which I do think there's going to be a good amount of that here. It'll all just come down to whether or not they can hit putts, but I like them quite a bit, and especially with those placings. Probably going to dive in a little bit more, make a couple more outrights just of some of these teams a little further down the board. Definitely want those each ways. So if you want to check out thehelmsports.com, I will definitely have everything up over there by Wednesday night. So basically, if I add anything, that's where to check. Not going to do a newsletter this week. It's just a little bit of a weird week, and don't think there's too much content to put out there other than we said. But as I said, definitely going to dive into LIV this week. I want to see. This is one of their better events, so I want to see how it goes and how interested I can stay for how long. Basically, as I said, I've watched some LIV tournaments in the past, and basically it comes down to whether or not I've had wagers on guys and they're up there on a Sunday, whether how long I tune in for. But I do think that this one I want to kind of get a better idea overall. It's not going anywhere. So just final thoughts really is, if you hate LIV, just get over it. I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. I get it. I get your reasoning if it's the Saudis and the money and all that. But at the end of the day, it's another golf league. There's good golfers there. Sure, the product and tournaments might be a little bit weird and wonky, but I mean, look at what the PGA has turned into recently too. So I do think that as long as these 2 tours are going to be around, we're going to have to deal with it. And why not try and make some money off of it while we're at it? That's basically where I stand. I'm just, as I said, I'm not leaning heavy one way or the other. I wish these guys were all playing on the same course every single week, but that's clearly not going to be the case. So we might as well deal with it while we're here. But as I said, check out thehelmsports.com. Not any articles up there, but you can head to the My Bets tab, and I will have everything up there that I have for the week for both LIV and for the Zurich. But that's going to do it for this week. I am your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
just have fun out there.